Hello everyone, and welcome to our meditation with the basting stitch. So we're going to start first with calling on all of our complete ancestors, with calling on the elements of earth, water, fire, air, ether, to help guide us through this process of transformation. And the piece we're going to be working on today is part of our primary deconstruct collection. And we want to share this process of recreating from used garments and how that can be an alchemical process through our psyche and also through materials, as they are a part of the landscape. And we also have our own internal landscape. And so through this act of stitching, or just learning the basting stitch, we're going to share with you this integrative practice. And so as we are sitting here on the land, we're sitting on the lands of the occupied Duwamish and Coast Salish lands here in the Pacific Northwest. And so we want to acknowledge that. And we want to, so as we're here, perhaps we can also take a moment for you to acknowledge the lands that you're on, the indigenous lands that you're on, while also thinking about the indigenous lands that our ancestors come from. And with the sky above us and the sea that surrounds, may this be an act of regeneration from the present moment, so that we may emerge with our minds and our bodies as one. And with that, we're going to raise the flag of imagination so that we may be guided through this process. And this is what we're going to be working on today. This is a t-shirt. It was my brother's t-shirt. It was his t-shirt from being a dishwasher, and as you can, it's got all of these stains at the bottom, but I've screen printed over them, and that's something that we offer. You could send us your stained garments and we'll screen print over them. You can see that offering on our website, reglow.net. You could also just color over it yourself. You can get some non-toxic paint. They have non-toxic fabric paint. Or you can use natural dyes. There's all sorts of things to do to renew and maintain and regenerate these acts from, regenerate our characters from our internal landscape, because they're connected. So let's get into the blanket stitch and we can explore a lot of these. We can explore more about like thoughts that arise in my relationship to this garment. So this was a little reminder for me that we're going to be doing the basting stitch around the neck. And here's our thread. Oops. Okay. So for a basting stitch, what does that mean? A basting stitch is stitching. Well, actually, no, I'm gonna get my basting thread. Here's my basting thread. And I'll pull one out of here. And we'll get our needle. We're going to also be exploring what are our associations of based, of the word based. So we thread our needle. As this is also a part of our series on the craft terms glossary, where we are exploring the terminology of craft itself through the process of making, through poetry, through conversations, and different means to where these terms are invoked. Their wisdom can be revealed to us and where we're at now. And so the basting stitch, from what I have learned, is a stitch that temporarily holds it holds two or more pieces of fabric together, and it's temporary, and so there's no knotting. I'm going to enter in to here, enter into the side. We're going to do a basting stitch along this edge. To join these two, actually that's we're gonna stop this actually, because that's okay. So I guess we're just gonna switch gears here, because this is not actually a basting stitch, because if this was going to be a temporary thing, it's something that I would eventually take out, and what I was about to do is not something to be taken out. So let's talk about running stitch. I think basting stitch is more appropriate for like applique or patching, something to kind of like tack something in place. Like maybe you're gonna be holding it and stuff, so pins are gonna like, sometimes pins just get in the way of being able to hold something because they can poke and be prickly. And so let us also think about how anything I'm saying might be a metaphor for the decolonization of craft and our psyches. So we have, what we're gonna do is we have this piece of material and we're gonna join it to the neckline of this. So to do that, I'll need to join these two pieces together first. And it looks like when I lay this out, it looks like there's gonna be some extra. I don't want to get too tunnel visioned into what I think this is going to be because I want to be guided by the process. So right now we're talking about a running stitch. And what is a running? The act of moving fast, the act of my legs moving and carrying me quickly across some land. And so if I'm running, which right now I'm not running, but I'm imagining if I were running, where am I going? Where am I going so quickly, and why am I moving so quickly? Is it to burn? Is it for my body to burn? Burn aspects away? Okay. I realized that I'm gonna have to cut this part of the neckline off. So it might get bigger, so I'm not sure. I might not have to trim down these two pieces. So what I'm gonna do is open them up and stitch the two ends together, because we're doing a running stitch and we're headed in a direction, and the direction is, I think if you're moving fast, the difference between moving slow and moving fast is like, if someone's moving fast, they're going somewhere quickly. If someone's moving, but also it could be like you're moving quickly and you're present and you're not actually. Where is the destination? Are you moving through? So here's a running stitch. It's the simplest stitch, and I'm sure there are many other ways to describe this kind of stitch, and words that are used to describe running. And I wonder, running in the English language might not be the word that's used in this stitch too. So I think that can also say something about the way crafting has been termed in association with the body as well. So it's just the simplest form of going in and out and in and out from side to side. And I just kind of like fold material onto the needle, loading it up, and then when it feels like ready to be pulled through, then I pull it through. I'm using a double thread right now. And I knotted it at the beginning. If you're curious to learn about how to knot into the material, and if you're curious to learn to visit our exploration of the term knot, then you can go to that video. So I'm just thinking of like running. If you're moving quickly and moving somewhere, it kind of creates a line, like a thread in a sense is a line going from one point to the next point. And now we clip it, and now we're going to go to the other side as well, stitching the right sides together, right sides being the face side, the side that's going to be seen. So like when I think about running, a running stitch, it's like the thread is it's starting one place and it's going to the next place, and it's going in a line. It might not be a straight line, but there's a clear path. And just because it is itself like a line, it's still like multi-dimensional. It's a multi-dimensional line because this thread in particular is polyester, and it's been spun from fibers, so it is a multi-dimensional line. And I want to bring in aspects of the river of culture into this terminology too, because our focus is on decolonization and how the relationship between decolonizing our minds and decolonizing our lands, this is creating relationship between those things in materials, and also as we're recording this and sharing this with you and sharing presence with you. So running, there's also this sense of like running away from something. Like the history of colonization, people were running quickly, and they were running I don't think it's like they were running really fast, but it's like, where were they really going? Like some of my ancestors, the Irish, who left Ireland, there could be a lot of reasons why they did that. Okay, we're gonna clip this now. So now we can see that when we flip it, now we have a tube. And this is what we're gonna join and make a collar as. So we still want to be, we're still talking about a running stitch though. So let me get another garment that's going to have a running stitch. I'll be right back. Okay, so we have some more yellow material. These are pieces actually from a sweater or a sweatshirt. You can, I don't know if you can tell, but it's like a tube. It's like knit in a tube. So these strips that I cut, they're like strips from the tube of the sweatshirt. And this sweatshirt has an interesting story. I wonder, I could speak to how that relates to running for sure. I'll get to that. And this here is a purple, kind of like long sleeve shirt with this like collar and zipper, and I cut it kind of off center, and we're gonna bind down each side. But in order to bind it, I need to, a binding is like wrapping around a seam with the material, but to do that first I need to do a running stitch, first joining the seams, and then I can wrap it around, and then I'll do another stitch on the other side that's closing it. Okay? And we're not gonna take this apart. We're gonna sew this because I'm interested to see how we can play with this loop, how we can play with how the materials are. And I think it's interesting too to think about the act of running as a loop, and this loop that just happens over and over and over and over and over again. And so we might think about what is a cycle. What is a cycle? I think a cycle in part is an aspect of regeneration. But what happens when that regeneration is, we're gonna stitch these. Actually, I want this fuzzy side to be showing, so we're gonna stitch this side on. Yeah, so what was my question? Cycles? Oh, right. Well, I was thinking about the Irish. So, like the Irish, thinking about my ancestors who left Ireland. I found this organization, this Celtic Druid temple in Ireland. You can search it if you want, if you're interested in learning, if you're Irish and you have Irish ancestors, or if you're just interested in Irish and Druids, because Druids were not just in Ireland, they were, this Celtic Druid temple has temples in different countries too, not just Ireland. So we're doing our running stitch. So like, what were the Irish running from? There was the potato famine. I know that's when, just doing the research of when the potato famine happened, and when I know of when my Irish ancestors immigrated, it was the same, around the same time. And so in the 1800s, and it was actually in the 1500s when, so I learned from the Druid temple that it was the indigenous peoples of Ireland did not consent. You know, indigenous peoples don't just become colonized without putting up a fight usually, and they did not consent for the British to colonize them. And it was the Vatican who forged a document in the name of Ireland, or the Irish authority, to seize Ireland. And then that started giving the colonizers more, I want to call it like a delusion, like this idea that people can come and just say that they own something just because they came up with the idea of ownership in itself. Whereas before it was like the land is a sovereign being. You don't own the land. You're in relationship with the land. You listen to the land. You work with the land. You honor the consciousness of the land and all the beings there, and the things that happen without trying to control them. It's more of like listening to them. And so that's what's brought me here, is like, well, if we can't undo what we've done, what we can do is regenerate. And so it seems like learning to listen again is a way to regenerate. So by listening to these materials, even though they have some synthetic components to them, like this yellow sweatshirt is acrylic, and I know there are so many studies that show how synthetic materials are polluting, and to the environment, to the people that make them, to the oceans and the microplastics and everything. Like, there's so much that says that these are polluting. And I would argue and I would challenge that to say, what lens are you looking at these materials through? Are you recognizing them as part of the consciousness of the earth and of the land in itself? Because I think it is. I think that these materials have an agency, and that their essence is alive. They're composed of different materials, and so we're thinking of running. So the Irish were running. Oh, there was the potato famine when we learned about how monocropping, how growing a single type of potato after there were like hundreds of different types of potatoes and different varieties, and the diversity of the environment and the biosphere is important, and that is what helps to having a diversity in plants and organisms. I mean, not just any diversity, but like a way a way that they're all working together. The cycle. And then the cycles of that, you will only know the cycles of that through time and listening. But what happened in the potato famine was that they decided to grow one type of potato, and then that wiped out environments. And people left Ireland because it was being colonized, and because the sovereignty of the land was being destroyed, and so people left. And a lot of the Irish people were slaves, or maybe they were housekeepers or servants to an elite class of Europeans holding power through this military idea of ownership. And when the Irish people and the African people or peoples tried to organize with each other to work together to reclaim their sovereignty, the elite class became threatened by that. And then they told the Irish people, like, no, you're white, you can be elite too, and created propaganda to separate how they were organizing together, and how black people and white people were, or no, then it wasn't seen as black people and white people, because until then Irish people weren't seen as white. But anyways, so the elite wanted to maintain their power, so then they gave Irish people this illusion that they could also become elite. And people believed them. And I just question why, if people are running towards whiteness, the idea of whiteness, the idea of being supreme, pure, at the top of the hierarchy, with all of the power to tell other people what to do. But why? Why would you even want that power? Why would you want to tell people what to do? Why are you're it's like running, if we're not, because if you're not actually listening to people, you're enslaving their labor, you're enslaving what they're doing, assuming that they wouldn't know what to do otherwise within the system. So in my mind, I just think like this, where are you running to? And it doesn't seem, are you running into your own grave? Like, or you're just running into abusing your power. And I feel like when people abuse their power, it's because their power has been abused. So they don't even recognize their own power because someone else has taken that from them. Ireland was taken from them in this frame of reference. Well, now we're starting on a new stitch. It's a running stitch, but this is our second thread. We knotted off and now we cut a new thread, and now we're knotting on to another bit. So yeah. So people aren't really going anywhere quickly. It's like running away from something, and now we're here. And we can't run away from it anymore because there's nowhere to go. And there's so much waste of materials, while at the same time there's so much in economic enslavement. It's like how can there be a new economics where we can regenerate the sovereignty of our consciousness in relationship with the land? And working with garments here, it's also like our bodies. It's also our relationship with our bodies is reflected in our relationship with the lands. And our bodies are our existence. For those of you who can understand the language that I'm speaking, or understand the language that I'm speaking. And so this material, me, you, working with material, creates a conduit. It creates something for spirit to engage with us and to express through. And I think this is something I've been recognizing growing up in like a Christian household, Pentecostal Christian household. I was taught as a child that I needed to be, that I was in the world but not of the world, and it created this kind of separation between me and the world. And in questioning so many things, I realized that is something to question as too, and that teaching can become so confusing because I'm realizing that the materials and myself are deeply interconnected, and the materials have a spirit as well, and they have an essence as well. And if I were to say like I am not of the world, well then what is I? Who is I? It's just really disorienting. But in the act of making a garment, it can be really meta, like thinking about how I'm thinking about existing, creating, being in that space of like preparing for that character. And even as we're doing this, as we're doing the running stitch, this is real frequency and energies that we're stitching into these materials. And I just got the idea that like you could, there's so many different ways that something like this could be interpreted or applied to something else. I think this idea of restitching through the runs, well, I lost my train of thought, but I didn't lose my train of threads. It's right here. And we're moving through. This yellow sweatshirt I found at the bins at Goodwill, and then I bought it, and then I wore it, and then I think I spilled beer on it. This was maybe in 2014 or something, and then I went through a big purge where I was getting rid of everything, and a couple of years later I was at a thrift store and I was like really drawn to this yellow sweatshirt, and I was like, oh, this is cool, so I bought it and I took it home and I put it on, and I noticed the stain, and then I noticed that it just looked really familiar. And then I remembered that I had actually bought it before, and I had bought it for the second time, and I actually knew where the stain had come from. And I was, yeah. It might have been beer, or it might have been wine, but it was like a really vague memory, because if it, if it was alcohol of some kind, it could even have been like my dad spilling his wine on me. I think it probably was that, because I think, well, he did that more than once. Dad spilling wine on me. Where is Dad running? My dad loves to run. And my stepmom loves to run for fitness. And I never loved running. And I figured if I was gonna be in shape, why would I run? I mean, when I think about this loop of material, it reminds me of a treadmill. Like, why are you running? You could be doing something else. Recently I heard somebody, I think it was Winona LaDuke, was saying, like, if you're gonna have a treadmill, you might as well, like, figure out a way for it to power the building you're in. 'Cause really, it's like, where are you going? Why are you in such a rush to go somewhere? And when you're on a treadmill, it's even more exacerbated, because it's like you're not going anywhere, but you're running. But maybe you're going somewhere in your mind. Maybe you're running towards fitness, and you want to get there. Maybe you're running to sweat out all your worries. You're running to regenerate, because that's what cycles do, is they regenerate. And Yeah. This mic is kind of, okay, slipping away from my mouth. So we're getting closer to the end here. Oh. It's funny because it's actually starting to pull this collar down, so it's like the collar's being pulled down and the hem's being pulled up, attached to this loop. It's like there's this tension between going up and going down. A tension in this cycle between moving up and moving down. And I think that's expressed in wanting to progress. Humans wanting to progress, this idea of capitalism and colonization and racism and hierarchy. It's like this elitist is wanting to just be on top. They're just wanting to reach higher and higher into the space of luxury, into a space of being pristine and absolved of any accountability, because they're so powerful that they don't have to be accountable for their actions because their money speaks for them. And in this garment, what it's actually showing us is that it's being strained. Like, see here, it doesn't lay flat. The hem, by the time I'm done, the hem is going to be attached here, and it's going to be curling up, and the collar is going to be curling down, and it's this sense of like elitism, or within the intersectionality theory, people who hold the most power. If the status quo is this white Eurocentric man, and being the highest form of excellence, and everyone else is trying to become that. It's like, no, that height of elitism is an illusion. And it's like this circle is like stretching down, like it can no longer hold that. And the system is starting to collapse because the people who have been maintaining all of the labor for that to happen are saying no. And people are listening, and they're looking, and they're seeing, and we're here now. We're learning about our own history, of our own indigenous peoples that we come from, and how primitive beings are not actually primitive. Like Neanderthals is racist science. And it's all through the definition of this white elitism. So okay, that's this run for now. And I've nodded off, and now I want to start with the other one. And we have about 10 minutes left. And if you're interested in anything I've been talking about, you know, I encourage you to learn about Black feminist theory, learn about Native feminist theory, learn about what does the sovereignty of consciousness mean. Because there's it means different things to different people, and the more perspectives that we can learn from, the more we can gain a deeper understanding about what that means. And I'm expressing to you what I've learned, and I'm definitely open to questioning that as well. So now we're going to move on to the next side. And the next row, the next side of our running stitch. Where are people running to? Where are they going? Because we can't run away from ourselves any longer. Because we've just been regenerating the same pattern. So, well, I guess it changes. But what I mean about the same pattern is like, actually the aspect of change is really important because things are always changing. And in some ways people say that we keep repeating our same mistakes and they have no hope. And that's partly apathy is what can lead to people not really trying, not being able to see that there is another way. There is meaning. And the fabrications of that meaning is like, you know, how can it cultivate love and a sense of ease? And when we recognize that we're interconnected, we recognize the need to listen to each other. Not just to do as somebody says, but just to listen. Because that shows where that person is at. And so we're doing this running stitch. Our minds have been running. We've been imagining how our ancestors were running, what they were running from, and now, as a regeneration of our ancestors, how can we call on our ancestors who were complete in their relationship with their body and mind? And what I hear is that we need to listen with our hearts, running forever, for never, for being forgotten, the never, forever, being endeavor. We've been lost in oblivion. We've been cost to the trillion. We've been rowing our boats across the shore, now and forevermore. The license to row, the license to drive, the license to run, to breathe. Is there a license for that? Who gives you the license? Who denies it? Who accepts it? When we realize these fabrications are fabrications, we learn to question them. We enter into the conversation of that inquiry. We develop our own inquiry, our own perspectives, acknowledging our own positions, and we run. We run towards wellness. We run towards listening. We run to silence our minds so that we may listen to our hearts. We run to the anthem of our heartbeat. We run in the stadium of the field of our internal and external landscapes. The thread runs between them. It runs back and forth. What I see above and what I see beneath it. And in between, it joins. It joins the layers. The layers of our fabrications. One system running through the next system. That system running through the next system. Another system that's joining the systems. The systems being the knit. What is the type of knit? How has it been fabricated? In a factory? Far away from me? Where do I run to? Now in my mind and view, in the view I see the frame of reference. Who's to know what really happened there? Who's alive to climb the stair? And all the effervescence, meaning for the essence, meaning for the essence. I turn around and see the footprint on the ground, and all beside me greets the air with every step I take. If the air could speak, what would they say? It lights the avenue I walk alone. There's a door into my imagination. Where does it go? To manifest the destiny, to manifest the illusion of white supremacy, is to ignore the consequence, the exhaust. Where will the exhaust go? Where will the exhaust go? Where will the exhaust go? In emptiness, emergence will never cease to flow, and I attest to the conquest of galvanizing the soul. What is the soul? I do not know. Although many people seem to think they do. And in the airs, I feel the pattern of your social protocol. And when I question it, I question it. And when I question it, behind what wall and through what lens and into the memory of what device? Ooh. Alright. there's a running stitch for now. So we want to thank you for tuning in into the running stitch with us. And we want to thank all of our ancestors for guiding us through this process of transformation. And we release you. Thank you.